Again, I'm going to record this little bit because we're going to do some close AO2 analysis now of this final section of Act 2, Scene 4. There's a couple of people who can't be in the lesson, so hopefully this will help them as well. And I am hoping that, oh, hang on, it will continue to work. No, it might not. Why have I lost my screen? Loom for Chrome. So I think you should, even though you can't see me, I think we should be still recording this little bit. Right, good, okay. So I'm not going to stand at, oh no, in fact I can stand at the board because it's not recording me anymore. So, where's my orange pen that I like to use? And we can hide that for a second. So the fill has gone, and now these are the instructions that Orsino is about to give to Cesario. I'm going to read it through with you, and I would like you then to, first of all, we're just going to highlight what we think is important to notice for AO2. Then we're going to agree what the AO2 terminology is, and then we're going to say, how does all of that help us expand on an AO1 point, or help us even create an AO1 point? Okay, I've just realised the mic's over here, so that might be helpful. Get thee to yon same sovereign cruelty. Tell her, my love, more noble than the world, prizes not quantity of dirty lands. The parts that fortune hath bestowed upon her, tell her, I hold as giddily as fortune. But 'tis that miracle and queen of gems that nature pranks her in, attracts my soul. So, first of all, which are the bits, so you're thinking, which are the bits of language that are interesting that I'm going to want to comment on? So who's going to start me off? Got my highlighter ready. Ben, you start me off, please.
The same sovereign's cruelty bit.
So, sovereign cruelty, we know is important to comment. That's all we're going to do for now, is highlight them, and then we'll come back and debate them. Rebecca, you want to give me another one?
Attracts my soul.
Attracts my soul. Nice. Megan, how about you?
I was going to say more noble than the world.
I would agree. There's a lot in this, by the way. Bless you. But it doesn't mean we have to talk about every single bit. Jess? I'm just going to do prizes. Stephen? Anything else?
Fortune.
Yeah. So let's look at fortune there. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. That's enough to be going on with. I'm going to go over to the board now. I don't know if this mic can still pick me up, but at least you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use a blue pen. So what is the AO2? What's that? Sovereign cruelty is the use of a... What's a sovereign in these terms? Bit higher up, you're on the right lines. A little bit lower. Royalty, yeah. I mean, often that word is used in relation to God, actually, Stephen, so you're not far off. So, she's being referred to as a queen. Now, she's not a queen, therefore, this is a metaphor. Yeah. Quick question, does metaphor have an E on the end? No, so stop putting one on. Thank you. Is it anything else apart from a metaphor? Because a sovereign shouldn't be cruel.
No, because someone can be.
It could, yeah, possibly. Is she a queen and is she being really cruel? So what is it? One hyper? It's hyperbole. Does that have an E on the end, Piper?
Yeah.
Yeah. You thought it was a trick, didn't you? Okay. More noble than the world? Yes. Sometimes I get caught out, yes. Because I was thinking, foremost, it's also another use of hyperbole. We'll put an H. So next one is use of fortune. Good. We've got our motif of money, but also fate. It's the two things being combined here, isn't it? Attracts my soul. He keeps talking about like his love and his heart and his soul as things separate to him, doesn't he? Now that you've looked, is there anything else you'd like to comment on? Is there any A or two you think you might want to think about?
You say the repetition of the whole is
Yeah.
derived by example.
Good, repetition. Yeah. You don't have to be too complicated with your A or two. You just have to be using the correct terminology. Remember that analogy I used week one about the science experiment? You wouldn't talk about, did I use that? You wouldn't write up a science experiment, would you, by saying, I poured some white liquid into a beaker, then I heated it up till it was quite hot, and then I poured in some blue crystals and watched what happened. You would say I heated up 50 millilitres of water to whatever degree and then added 10 milligrams of copper sulfate solution. You would be very specific. And it's exactly the same here. The more that you are confident using the terminology, the more you show the examiner that you're an expert in literature. I'm just looking at this one here. 'Tis that miracle and queen of gems that nature pranks her in. Again, use your notes in your Arden. It is a metaphor. Right, so we've got the miracle bit. That miracle and queen of gems. Which bit? So what's he saying there? Good. So we've got, if we're going back here, with the whole thing about kind of money, so we've got prizes, and we've got gems, and fortune, and it's all becoming a bit ironic, isn't it? The more that he's saying, I don't value her for this, the more he's forced to use that language. But he's saying that he prizes the natural things that are within her. What does pranks mean? Does it say in your Arden? Adorns her. So he's saying that nature is personified here. And he's saying, look, I don't fancy her. I'm not in love with her because she's rich. I'm in love with her because she's rich on the inside. Right, so now that we've kind of unpicked some of that analysis, now that we've completed some analysis, our next step, let's do a nice purple, is to ask ourselves how, she says, trying to write on the screen, what kind of idea does all of that help us perform, suggest, describe, evaluate? We'd use all of that evidence to say what? Think of it like, I bet a lot of you watch things like CSI or kind of true crime stuff. I bet loads of you watch that. Put your hands up if you do watch anything like that. Half the class, me included. I've been watching that thing about Dr. Shipman, Harold Shipman, on BBC. Responsible for about, they're estimating, about 250 murders. And do you know why it didn't make such a big fuss at the time? Because they were elderly people. We're a very ageist society. Yeah, I know. A little aside there. Sorry if you wanted just a pure Shakespeare lesson. So, what do you call someone who performs an autopsy? You watch the programmes. So a coroner, you'd wait for like the coroner's report. So the coroner, this is all getting a bit grim, the coroner has cut up the body. It's one of those murder ones, and they're going, and we all thought that they died by falling down the stairs. But what I've discovered is, and they find a weird mark on the inner thigh, and then a bruise on the shoulder that is not consistent. And all of that evidence leads them to conclude that the death occurred by. So we're doing the same here. We're interrogating, we're dissecting the text, and we're saying all of this analysis leads us to say that. What? Grace?
Well, because a lot of it was business transactions when trying to make it more less art and make it more.
Go on, there's an idea there.
It's more emotion towards her. It's like more of a relationship between them two rather than distant with the business.
Right. I like that idea. And now I need to take a step back and help you. What are the ways, what are some of like the key things that you're always going to want to discuss in an AO1 idea? And Grace has actually given us two without using the words. What kind of areas would we be exploring in this play? I'm asking the wrong question because you're all looking very befuddled. This section helps us learn about what? Or who? Right, so one is characterisation. You can make an AO1 point about characterisation, yeah? What else can you make an AO1 point on? Laura? Lucy, sorry. What else is this about? It's about Orsino, and it's also about... It is, so that's still characterisation. It's also about, Hannah? Because it's about the theme of fortune and money and love. Yes. Right, so you can make an A1 point about characterisation or theme, or honestly, these are like dead straightforward. This isn't a trick. That's still characterisation. We write about the characters, we write about the themes, we write about the... Right, okay, so let's go back. In your introduction, when you get a scene to analyse, what three things go into your introduction? The plot. You write about where this scene occurs in the play and what it does. How does it move the plot on? Or does it introduce something new? And what's a good question to ask to get to the answer for that? What do you ask yourself of that scene? What do you say, Grace? Remember?
Why is it at this point?
You do. That is a good question. You ask, why is it here? And a good way of thinking about that is to ask yourself, What would happen if I took this scene out of the play? If this scene were cut, what would I lose? Now, let's think about that then. For Act 2, Scene 4, what's the big thing that you would lose if this scene went? Thinking about yesterday's lesson and what you saw.
The escalation of Zeno and Viola.
Right, the escalation, the development of the love between Orsino and Viola. Remember, we watched two scenes. One where Viola was being guarded and it didn't work. And then they did it again and it ended up with them kissing. Right? So those are the three areas. So can you all write that down? Ask yourself, what difference does it make if this scene is removed? It's a really good way to think, what do you lose? And if you've lost it, it must mean that it's in that scene. Okay. Excuse me. So if we move on, Orsino goes on to say, there is no woman's sides can bide the beating of so strong a passion as love doth give my heart. No woman's heart so big to hold so much, they lack retention. Alas, their love may be called appetite, no motion of the liver, but the palate, that suffer surfeit, climate, and revolt. But mine is all as hungry as the sea, and can digest as much. So can you have a go now at doing, first of all, the highlight? What would you want to focus in on there? And then we'll do the AO2 together. If you haven't got a highlighter yet for lit, I'd strongly recommend getting one. It's very worthwhile, especially the lovely new pastel ones. So if you're watching this at home, you can also be highlighting. I love how I'm saying this and it probably isn't even recording. Right, about another minute, that shouldn't take you very long. You want to be looking at a minimum of there's at least 4. Right, you ready? So, Neve, start me off. What am I highlighting? Good. Liliana. Good. Very rubbish highlighting. Lucy.
By the beating.
Bide the beating. Good. Megan.
I can't say it, but the suffers to fight.
That suffer surfeit, climate, and revolt. I think you say surfeit. Any more? Have I missed anything? Right, so bide the beating is alliteration. Their love may be called appetite is metaphor. It's also a motif of food, of consumption, of consuming things. Good. What about, and then that's developed, isn't it? So that motif of food is developed there. No motion of the liver but the palate. So that's suggesting that it's just sensory. They just want to taste. It's like eating chocolate. Chocolate does us no physical good whatsoever. But many of us eat chocolate because it makes us feel nice. He's saying that's what women do with love. It's not kind of deep inside. I don't know why my voice went like that then. And it's the same thing that suffer surfeit, cloyment and revolt. Come on, where have we seen this before?
First scene.
Good lad, Act 1, Scene 1, he's literally talking about himself. He's, let music be the food of love, give me excess of it. So that he can make himself sick. Oh my God, Orsino, do you even know who you're talking about here? Well, these women. You. Right, good. Hungry as the sea? Yes, good. Yes, personification, simile, and something that runs throughout the play is the use of the nautical imagery. Remember, Act 1, Scene 2 is a shipwreck. Antonio saves Sebastian from drowning. That's why I like in the national production where Olivia tries to seduce Cesario in a hot tub. I think that's, I don't know if that's a deliberate reference to like, but I like it. She throws in these tiny little swimming trunks. Or she throws her in these tiny little swimming trunks. Okay, good. So, if we were writing a point about the characterisation of Orsino in this section, there's a lot to say, isn't there? There's an awful lot to say. And all of it, if we haven't got this turned down, is pretty ironic. Because he without knowing it, he's literally talking about himself. But remember, Viola is still in love with him, so we don't want him to appear too cringy. Oh, I didn't put the next one on. Okay. I didn't get rid of Chrome, did I? Right, so that worries me. Although it's still, the light's on. But there's no thing, you know, normally at the bottom there, it shows me I can go up and down. Oh, now it's stopped. Oh, because look, it's... Right, hang on. Let's see if it works. Oh, it's uploading it. So that looks like it did work. Unless it's just uploaded that tiny bit. If not, if it is, I'll be really annoyed. Okay. It says 24 minutes ago. Oh, you're back, are you? Hi. Absolute loser. Is it still recording? It's still recording. Oh, I'm a technical wizard. You love it when I do this, don't you? Okay. Well, if it's still recording, I'm going to keep going. You can't even stop me. So, let's move me over there out the way. And he ends by saying, make no compare between that love a woman can bear me and that I owe Olivia. Interesting use of the word owe there. What does he owe her? Maybe he's back to that. But I know, what dost thou know? Too well what love women to men may owe. In faith they are as true of heart as we. My father had a daughter loved a man, as it might be. Perhaps, were I a woman, I should your lordship. So back to what that director was saying yesterday about the tension between, she's got the opportunity here to reveal herself, but should she? So she's still tiptoeing around it, she's still dressed as a man. What should she do? But here she gets the opportunity to tell her story a little bit. And what's her history? And I said that I would use this opportunity to make a little connection to another poem, because that's one of the things I like to do in my teaching is to... Do you know this poem, Hannah?
No, but I've read William Blake.
But you like William Blake. Do you know anything about him to tell the class, or you just like him? So Blake was like a forerunner of the Romantic poets. Some of you will have done the poem London in your anthology. Did you like it? Did you like any of the poems in the anthology, though? You did? What did you like? Did you? Yeah. Good. Oh, War Photographer is one of my favourites. And the guy that's about, Don McLean? It's about an actual photographer. I've got his autobiography. Really, really good. Yeah, really interesting. I'll lend you it if you want. You probably don't like it that much. Look at me. I always get too enthusiastic. I'll lend you the book. She's like, I just said I liked the poem. Have you read other Carol Ann Duffy? Do you like? Did she?
Yeah, and then Jane Weir and
Oh, nice.
but I liked it.
Nice. Oh, good. So we've got some enthusiasm for poetry in the room, which is always helpful because that's what you're going to be doing your coursework on next. Right, good. William Blake he didn't like what he saw around him in terms of how people were treated and how people lived in poverty. And he particularly didn't like how children were corrupted. So he didn't like the fact that lots of little kids were chimney sweeps, etc. And he didn't like either how women were treated. His wife was illiterate when they met, and he taught her how to read and write so that she could help him. He not only wrote his own poems, but he published them. He had a press, and he produced his own drawings and things, which are beautiful. So he was an interesting man, really interesting man. One of the most interesting things about him is that he was very religious. He felt that he was constantly surrounded by angels, and he would often have conversations with them. So nowadays we think that person was perhaps suffering from some kind of mental illness, but in those days he just went, he's a poet. So he's a creative. This poem, I'll read it to you. O rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy. So on the surface, it's just about a rose who, has been infested with some kind of worm, bug, insect, creature. I did spend quite a bit of time over lockdown spraying soapy water onto my roses to get the aphids off. And then the ladybirds came along and did their job. What else might this poem be about? What might that rose symbolise with a worm going into it and destroying its life? What's everything about in literature, Grace?
It's like hiding secrets and continuing inside.
Good. So that's linking back, isn't it, to our 12th night. She's going to talk about how her concealment basically made her waste away. Take it a bit further, though. This is literature. After all, what are all lit teachers obsessed with? Sex and death. So you could read this poem as a metaphor, an extended metaphor for sexual corruption and indeed for an STI. We didn't have much good. Liliana's looking like, oh God, this is when the English teachers go crazy. I hate it when they do this. Why can't it just be about a rose? And it's one of those things where the more you know about Blake, the more this reading makes a lot of sense. But I wanted to take that opportunity. We've got bed, we've got crimson joy. And the fact here, this is our most compelling evidence that this worm has a dark secret love. Doesn't sound very wormy, does it? It sounds very sexual. Right, good. But what's going on in Twelfth Night? Well, her damask cheek is kind of symbolised by the rose, right? Damask is it's a type of silk, isn't it? Hang on, am I making that up? And it's like a very dusky pink colour, yeah? First of all, the fact that her history is a blank. What did we say about Viola in Act 1, Scene 2? That it was like she was being reborn into like a new identity. So she's left that old one behind. And she can't reveal it now. She can't say, oh, by the way, I'm actually, Viola, the daughter of the Duke of Messalene. Come on, Julie, know your stuff. And what has she said previously? So concealment is another word for hiding or disguising. If you wear concealer, you're trying to disguise your bags under your eyes. I don't think it's working today. Twice that child had me up in the night, having nightmares, just crying. To rub his back. My child's 2 for the purposes of the video, not like 25 or something. Just thinking about people maybe watching this in 4 years' time and going, that's really weird. What's she doing that for? She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy sat like patience on a monument, smiling at grief. Sorry, she's earlier said about, what she said about her disguise. Earlier in the play, when she's realised that she's in love. Where'er I woo myself, what a baleful strife. Where'er I woo myself would be his wife. What she said about disguise before that. Yeah. We need the quotation though, don't we? We need it at our fingertips. Shall we have a look? There you go, you've all got the books in front of you. There's the bit about being a monster. Oh, it's not at that bit. No, it's a bit, sorry, I'm steering you wrong. It's the end of 1-5, isn't it? Where she's had the ring returned. Or 2-2. My goodness. Fortune forbid, my outside have not charmed her. Disguise, I see thou art a wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. So that's Act 2, Scene 2, line 27. Yeah, if you're in the Arden, it's page 210. Then she says, how easy is it for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms? We might want to think about that in relation to what Orsino has just been saying about women and their hearts. And then she calls herself a monster. Okay. So, sorry, I totally steered you wrong there with the wrong reference, but you'll get over it, don't worry. So we have a look at our notes. Patience is represented as a woman sitting on a stone. It's the idea that love is patient, that if it's true love, you can wait for it to come, which is the exact opposite of Orsino. who's impatient, keeps badgering Olivia. Yeah, and that's a reference to the actual. It says in your notes here, Caesar Reaper's Iconologia. Easy for me to say. We men may say more, swear more, but indeed our shows are more than will. What's she picking up on there? What's she saying? Our shows are more than will. Oh, Stephen.
Or shows like a Cesaro, I think. I don't know.
Right, so there's possibly something here about identity that as Cesario she can't show how much she wants to. Good, Lucy?
It's like they may display their affection, but if they don't want to, like they feel like they're happy.
The first bit's right. She's saying that men show their affections, like they display them more, but they're not as sincere as ours. That whole thing about men, the whole thing with Orsino is it's a big performance, isn't it? Whereas Viola, Cesario, has to kind of be quite still and keep it within her, but it doesn't mean her love is any less. But died thy sister of her love, my boy? And I love this answer. I am all the daughters of my father's house, and all the brothers too. And it's that comma. What happens around that comma? Is there a very long pause? Is she kind of looking at him like, that's your biggest hint, I am all the daughters of my father's house? At which point he's like, what? Eh? Or is he like, oh? Or does she panic? And all the brothers too? Or is she kind of resigned? I can't tell him at this moment. And all the brothers too. I'm just saying I'm the only one left. You're all going to go on and be theatre directors after this, aren't you? There won't be any jobs in the theatre, so you'll just have to pretend. Sorry, I'm not being political. Not till the video's off anyway. And yet I know not. I love that line. It could, in many productions, it could just be such a throwaway line. And yet I know not. But I think, to me, it's a really tortured line. She doesn't know who she is anymore. She doesn't know where she stands. She's completely lost. She thinks her brother's dead. Her father's definitely dead. She's in this new place. She's fallen in love with a man who she's serving. She shouldn't even be a servant because of her status. And yet I know not. I think that's one of the most important lines of the play. Because actually, what's going to happen after this is it's going to be her figuring out who she is and what happens. I don't know if that's ever properly resolved, if I'm honest. I think she still gets stuff kind of inflicted on her. Aye, that's the theme. So, yes, we're back to it. We're back to, yes, I remember what we were talking about before we got all distracted with your sister. And then he says, take her this jewel. I'm not interested in her money. Money's not important, but take her this jewel. Not, take her this bunch of wildflowers or just take her my love. It's all back to the money, isn't it? Woo! Right. I don't even know what's worked there. It could be that you've got 2 videos to watch. Bonus. That's where we've got to. So if nothing else, Lee, who's not here, I hope that's helped. Lucian still isn't back. Oliver, you're not with us today. Morgan, you're not with us. So hopefully it's going to help you at least go through those couple of bits. Right. Let's turn this